biology, adoption, and then intent. If I can assemble sperm, egg, and womb, and I intend to parent the child, I get parental rights and custody over a child that may or may not be related to me or the members of my household at all. Okay, so now you've set up that framework for parenthood, and that allows this absolute free for all in the big fertility marketplace for anyone and everyone with the money to acquire any kind of child without any kind of scrutiny.
Katie Faust, it's just such a privilege to talk to you. And what I wanted to talk about, if it's okay, you've written recently and spoken a lot about marriage and surrogacy. And I know we spoke to you about your wonderful book then before us, and you've since then written another book about how to raise conservative kids in a woke state. So it's not really applicable to the UK, but it is in a way. Maybe we can discuss that another time. But going on from, because you had a chapter as well about surrogacy in your book, but recently you've written and spoken a lot more about the importance of marriage and the runaway surrogacy industry. Now we've redefined marriage, and now marriage is taking a backseat in culture. And I just wanted to have a little chat with you about that, because the solution from your point of view is big marriage and government bigging up marriage. So first of all, in terms of surrogacy, tell me why suddenly you've thought, hold on, this is a problem Katie Faust needs to address.
Oh my gosh. Well, I wish I had caught on sooner. Let's just start with that. When I first started writing about marriage, I thought this was just about marriage. Kids need moms and dads. Like, that's when I was an anonymous blogger back in 2012. That was it. And it very, very quickly became clear to me that this was not just about marriage. If kids truly need their mother and father, which they do, then we've got a whole host of issues that have to be addressed from the perspective of the rights and well-being of children. One of those was divorce. One of them was cohabitation. One of them was having a very critical eye about these supposed studies that show no difference between two moms or two dads raising kids. One of them was the rampant, out of control commercialization and commodification of children through big fertility. And one aspect of big fertility is surrogacy. And so obviously, a lot of these other questions are kind of old school, like critiquing same-sex parenting is so 2015, and no-fault divorce. I mean, who's even talking about that anymore? That's like way 1980s and 1990s. Surrogacy is kind of the hot new thing. Surrogacy is what's headlining so many celebrity pregnancies these days, getting people riled up, even on the left and the right, over custom ordered babies that are being shipped to unvetted single men in China. Even some people on the conservative side who are having children through this means. There's been some, over the last year or two, some very well-known figures on the right, from Guy Benson to Dave Rubin, who have announced that they have created custom-ordered, intentionally motherless children through surrogacy, and many people on the right have applauded them for it. So I have just found that we have to start looking at this as it actually is, not as a means of getting kids to people who are infertile, not as a means of leveling the playing field for those who find themselves in a minority sexual status, or who are unwantingly single at a late stage of their life, or willingly single during their life. This really is not about adults. It's not about adult fulfillment. Not infertile heterosexual couples, nor the single or double or triple men that want to acquire children through this intentionally motherless process. This ultimately must be, like every marriage and family issue, this must be evaluated through the best interest of the child.
And you make the point that once you redefine marriage to include people who, by their innate biology, are unable to produce children, but then the law gives them some kind of quasi-right to have children, you're enshrining the notion of surrogacy and the notion that kids should be created not with the right to grow up with a biological mum and dad, but in order to fulfill somebody else's desire. And as you say, the adult desires then overtake the children's rights to grow up with a biological mum and dad, and redefining marriage leads to nothing more than that.
Right. And I would say there's even a step in between that, right? You redefine marriage and you immediately redefine parenthood. Okay, so once husbands and wives become optional in marriage, mothers and fathers become optional in parenthood. So then you actually have to reconfigure the basis for parenthood. So previously, we would have identified a legitimate parenthood relationship with the child as being biologically based, right? I am the genetic parent of this child, therefore I have a claim to this child, and then the child thus has a claim to me. And then we also, because we're and have been throughout history, throughout the Western experience, at least a just society will also figure out how do we accommodate and shepherd and seek to heal children who have lost their parents. So then we created another pathway for parenthood, and that was adoption, right? If a child loses their mother or father, if they can't or won't parent the child, then we place that child in the home of an adult who becomes a parent through adoption, not biology. But the adoptive lane does not happen immediately. You can't just say, I want to this kid, I intend to parent this kid, I have a desire to parent this kid. Social workers are not fools. Like, we have developed decades of best practice to screen, vet, and scrutinize people who want to parent unrelated children, because biology affords a level of protection that simply intending to parent does not. So throughout the last several decades, we have created, in essence, two pathways to parenthood. I would say two legitimate pathways to parenthood: biological connection and adoption, that adoptive connection. But because we've redefined marriage, it has required adding a third track to the parenthood lane, and that is an intent to parent. I intend to parent this child, even though I'm not biologically related, even though we're stripping the child of one or both biological parents. I can be a legitimate parent, even if I haven't gone through any of the vetting, screening, background checks, home studies, references that adoption requires. And not only can I do that, but you must allow me to do it in the name of equality, because it's discriminatory if I cannot have the same free access to a child that a heterosexual couple can have. And so what we're seeing in the United States, they're doing it in Europe too, through this certificate of parenthood that the EU is pushing on all the other member states, is adding a new category of parenthood: biology, adoption, and then intent. If I can assemble sperm, egg, and womb, and I intend to parent the child, I get parental rights and custody over a child that may or may not be related to me or the members of my household at all. Okay, so now you've set up that framework for parenthood, and that allows this absolute free for all in the big fertility marketplace for anyone and everyone with the money to acquire any kind of child without any kind of scrutiny.
So what do we do? How do we get from where we are, which is getting ridiculous? And I don't get some of the photographs. The whole conversation aside, two men will then purchase a baby from rent a womb or whatever they do in an egg, and then they're in a hospital bed with a newborn baby, and you think, what's that about? Surely the mother should be the one in the bed. But where do we get from where we are to somewhere which is a little bit more rational and a little bit more sensible, a little bit more child focused?
Yeah, well, we have to start with the rights and well-being of the child. If you want to, if in any way, in any of these conversations about marriage and family, if you focus on what the adults want, you're going to come up with all kinds of answers. If you focus on who children are, how they come to be, what they have a right to, what they need, and what they long for, that actually answers all of these questions. And the answer is no surrogacy for anyone, not the traditional surrogacy, which is really just a woman selling her own genetic child that she has given birth to, nor a gestational surrogacy where she's pregnant with somebody else's egg and then handing over the child that has bonded with her for 9.5 months. No surrogacy for the heterosexual couple that's taking home their own genetic child. No surrogacy for the single man who holds his baby like a sack of potatoes, holding up his surrogacy form so he can exit Mexico with a child that he has just purchased, with a face that looks more like a mugshot than a proud father. I mean, like,
And that was all over Twitter recently, wasn't it?
yeah, no surrogacy for anyone, because what surrogacy is, it is the intentional and usually commercial separation of a child from always their birth mother, often their genetic mother, and very often sent home to a house that will be deprived of maternal love at all. It is always the loss of one, two, or three of a child's mothers. And none of those mothers are optional in the life of a child. So how do we solve this? By absolutely, in 100% of cases, looking at surrogacy as an issue of child protection. That's really what it has to be. And honestly, we would do ourselves a lot of favor by looking at every marriage and family issue through the lens of the rights, well-being, and protection of children. That actually would solve every problem we've got right now on the marriage and family front.
Yeah, and you make the point that the very well made point when you've written about it in the couple of articles I've seen that you're saying, look, big marriage sorts the problem to a large degree. Governments should be promoting marriage, promoting people if they want a child, get into a stable marriage, stay in a stable marriage, and bring your children up responsibly and well to the benefit of yourselves and the children and society.
Mhm. Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, if we have a child-centric focus, we actually get all of these questions exactly right. But it's because our society is obsessively focused on the identity, desires, and feelings, longings, losses of adults, that not only are individual children hurting, but all of society is hurting as well.
Yeah, and what I love about your work, Katie, it's always backed up with evidence, statistical evidence, as well as anecdotal evidence from the people that you meet every day in your life, and you talk to real human beings and you tell their stories. And if people want to read some of that, of course, they can go to your book, Them Before Us, and there's a wonderful chapter on surrogacy. You've got lots of evidence there. Katie, keep defending marriage, keep defending children. Thank you very much for doing what you're doing. Wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you for your work. I was just telling you before you hit record. I think you are one of the best resources in the UK for marriage and family information. I consume your podcast. I love your newsletters. If you're listening to this right now, you need to figure out a way to support Tony and his work.
Katie, lovely to talk to you. Take care.
Take care.